the pre-image. Moving on, translate this triangle 4 units to the right and 3 units down. Okay, I'm not going to do that, but are the two triangles congruent? Remember what this word means. Remember what this word means. Well, it's a translation. First, you got to think about, is a translation a rigid motion? Because the definition of congruent says that two shapes are congruent if and only if there exists a sequence of rigid motions, if there exists a sequence of rigid motion that maps one figure onto the other. Okay, well, this is a translation. Is this a rigid motion? Yes or no? And if it is a rigid motion, then the shapes have to be congruent. Okay? So in this box, I want you to tell me why they are congruent. So now, this question. After a rotation of 180 degrees of triangle ABC, this is the result. B is equal to B prime. What can you conclude about B? Well, if I'm rotating a shape, pretend I'm rotating this figure, and I'm going to rotate around E. I'm going to rotate this shape around E. What are the points that are moving here? Right? The only points that are moving are W and G. Is E moving? Absolutely not. If E is not moving, then E prime has to be right on top of E. So in this case, what can we tell about B and B prime? Well, B has to be the center of rotation, okay? Because the center of rotation does not move. When reflecting an object over a line, corresponding, remember what this word means? It means in the same position. When reflecting an object over a line, corresponding pre-image and image points are. So that means that A and A prime, what do you know about them? They are congruent. When reflecting an object over a line, corresponding pre-images and image points are blank from the line of reflection, right? Are congruent, are prime. Yes, this is true. They are prime, but we're talking about as it relates to the line of reflection. Here's a line of reflection. Here's A prime. What can you tell me about the relationship between A prime, and the line of reflection? This is true. This is true. This is all true. But what about the line of reflection? How does it relate? This is how they relate. This piece has to be the same distance as this piece. Okay? Write the coordinate rule for the translation from the given information. Okay? Well, you can write the coordinate rule here. I'll write the coordinate rule for this one. So if I'm starting here and I'm ending here. This is my vector after a translation. So I went down how many units? I went down 1 and then I went down 2. So I know that's the y-axis. So that means that y is -3. Now I have to move to the left. How many units? Sorry, -2. Now I have to move to the left. How many units? Well, 1 unit and 2 units. That means that in X, I moved 2 units to the left. That's the negative direction. So this is my coordinate rule. Okay, that's my coordinate rule. What's the coordinate rule here? How did X go from 3 to -1, and how did Y go from 6 to 3? Okay, here, 3 units to the right. Is Y being affected by 3 units to the right? Is X being affected by 3 units to the right? In the diagram below, the two triangles are congruent. If I already know that the two triangles are congruent, then I know that there are only rigid motions that map one onto the other. That's the only thing that could happen. So describe a sequence of two transformations that would map ABC to triangle EDF. Be as specific as possible. Well, again, How do I know which points are corresponding here? Well, I know because the triangle, by the names of the triangle, I can tell. Notice that B is here, and also E is in the same position in according to the names. Those are the corresponding points. They are in the same position. So B has to land on top of E. So how do I get B to map to E? Okay, that's my question there. How do I get A to map to D, and how do I get C to map to F? Well, I know it's a rotation. I know it's a rotation. But first, I have to figure out what's going to be my center of rotation, my direction, and how I'm going to describe this angle of rotation. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to translate this so that I can find the center of rotation. I'm not using a compass and a straight edge. The question did not say to construct anything. It said to describe a sequence of transformations. So these tools are not being used. Now I know I have to map E to F, but I don't know how many units I'm going to move left, and I don't know how many units I'm going to move right. But I can describe distance and direction with a vector. Here's the vector, right? I know that after this translation, E is going to map to F. That's all I know. So translate, and I actually had to go in the opposite direction. So translate triangle BAC along the vector BE. So along this vector in that direction, BE. Okay, now B maps to E. Perfect. But I still need A to map to D, and I need C to map to F. Well, now I have something that looks like this. Some kind of triangle that looks like this. How do I get A and C? How do I get A and C to map to D? Well, now I got to rotate. So now rotate triangle BAC about what? What's the center here? Yes, this is the center. This is the point that I don't want to move. Rotate about E until, don't forget this word, until, this is very important. Until, well, first of all, in what direction do I need to rotate, right? Rotate clockwise, rotate counterclockwise, but I can also say until. Rotate E until A maps to D and C maps to F. Okay, that's all. Now, this question down here is the question we were working on before in class. How is it that bike mapped to golf? How did this quadrilateral map to this quadrilateral? Are they congruent? Is another question. Look back on the notes here on how I've said the word, how I've defined congruence, and how I've given my explanation to when two shapes are congruent, and use that same explanation. But let's go to this one. Given the point H with coordinates 4, -5, determine the location of H double prime after a sequence of transformations described. A translation, 1 unit left followed by a reflection over the x-axis. Well, if I'm translating, notice why there's 2 primes here. There's 2 transformations, 2 primes. The first thing is to translate 1 unit to the left. 1 unit to the left means that x is being affected. So in the negative direction, this means that this goes down to 3, and my 5 stays the same because nothing changed in the y direction. Okay, well, now I have to reflect over the x-axis. Okay, well, where is the point 3, -5? Point 3, -5 is somewhere down here. Let's call this A, let's call this A, and this is the x-axis. Well, if I'm going to reflect over the x-axis, that means that this point is going to map somewhere here, A prime. Think about what were the only things that changed. Did the x change? No, it just moved up, correct? It just moved up. So that means that A prime, oh, H double prime, sorry, and this we call H. H double prime has to have the same x coordinate as H prime. So we have 3. And what about distance? Well, this distance here is 5 units. That means that this distance also has to be 5 units, and this is 0. So that means this point here is going to be +5. So that's my coordinate point for H double prime. In this question, I'm supposed to reflect triangle RST. Well, luckily they already gave us the perpendicular bisector. They already gave us a perpendicular. So all we have to do is find the same distance. Well, the distance that is here has to also be here. And so this is called T prime. The same distance that is here is the same distance that needs to be here. So this is called R prime. Okay? And S will stay in the same place. Why? Because S lies on the line of reflection. And now connect, and you should have your triangle. Now, you should remember how to construct the line of reflection. Which of the following best describes the congruence transformation that maps one triangle onto the other? Okay, what happened here? What maps to what? G maps to, again, look at the names of the triangles. What does G map to? G maps to L. Well, G maps to L. G maps to L. F maps to M. F maps to M. What is going on here? How did F map to N and how did G map to L? I'll leave that up to you. It's a multiple choice question. And that is it. Good luck on your exam. You can contact me on the app Remind. Don't forget, this is the app Remind. And the class code is BF88K6, okay? If you have any questions, you can send me a picture here, a text message, and I will be able to help you directly.